Okay, guys, I want you guys to picture something with me. So, imagine you come home after work or school or whatever you guys do that makes you stressed out, and you go home and you sit down on your couch and you're gonna relax and you figure, okay, and you crack open a beer and you watch whatever game's on and you just think, this is the best, right? You're just relaxing. Wrong. Half of you guys in here aren't even old enough to drink yet. There have been so many times, but there have been so many times where I wanted to go into my backyard and have a bonfire and drink a couple beers with my friends and just listen to good music and just talk about my day. But then I figure, you know what, I have to go outside and then I have to spend my money and it's illegal and it's unhealthy. And all of us know that alcohol is unhealthy, but most of us still drink it anyway. And I figure, why? We all know the consequences, why? And it's because it's embedded into our American culture. And it's so much into our culture that there's even a special amendment about it. And speaking about that, I'm going to tell you why the legal drinking age should be lowered down to 18. I'm going to be telling you why it's our society's views on alcohol and our culture surrounding the substance that stops us from lowering it, and how moderation can help us guide our society towards achieving that. And it's our society's views on youth consumption of alcohol that has a negative connotation. Everybody thinks, college students and binge drinking, right? Everybody thinks, oh yeah, those stupid college kids that get all drunk and then throw up on each other, having a great time like that. And what's sad is that the college students have that negative connotation with them, but it's not always the case. As Barrett Seaman, a veteran of the Time magazine correspondent and editor and author of Binge, Campus Life in the Age of Disconnection and Excess, says, I look at Canada and the rest of the world and I see that people can drink at a younger age and be civilized about it. It's ourselves that create that negative connotation of college students and binge drinking, when in other parts of the world, college students aren't always affiliated with that. They're more responsible. And in other countries, it's promoted to drink at a younger age because it's part of their social connection. It's part of their social events that they have. And it's seen as appropriate, while over here it's not. We separate ourselves from the younger generation and the older generation. And what's sad is that we see alcohol everywhere in all of our social events. You see that negative connotation, like I said before, of binge drinking in the college students. But if you look at another scene, like a wedding, and people are toasting champagne, right? You don't think anything grotesque about that. You see it as elegant, other people, right? And then you also see events like drinking a beer and eating a burger. Having that beer as an actual beverage and not just a substance to get intoxicated. It's all about our perceptions on our views on alcohol that cause that negative connotation towards younger adults. And I think that moderation is key because William DeJong, a School of Public Health professor of community health sciences and an expert on alcohol education, says, there's no political will to change the law. The states are against the federal law that insignificates the current law, a cost that's enormous and provokes other opposition groups like MAD, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So right now there's no real opposition against changing it because our society still holds that view on negative connotation with alcohol and college students. So I believe that moderation and learning how to educate other people younger people on how to drink responsibly will slowly take away that negative association. And once we change our culture in a way, it's going to take a lot of time, but once we kind of change our culture in the way that we view it, we're going to be able to actually want to change the law.
All right, Frank, what did you think?
I was able to like easily identify our thesis statement. It was like really solid, like why legal drinking should be down to 18. So I was able to identify that really easily. The introduction was really good, and then when you talked, you seemed really relaxed, and like you kept looking at the audience. You got all the audience involved, so we paid a lot of attention to that, and you used the works cited very well. Like you would say the person's name and then works cite that, which was really good. But the stuff that I thought you needed to work on a little bit was like you tend to keep looking at your notes a lot. Like especially when you cite the person, just keep looking down instead of looking at the audience. And just practice. You just need to practice a little bit more, and then your speech would have been like really, really well. And then the transition part, it was really hard for me when you transitioned over to the next topic. It was really hard for me to identify it. And other than that, like I really liked your conclusion. It was really strong. Like I was first against it, and then now I'm like, oh okay, she has a reason behind it. The reasonings are really solid. So yeah.
Okay, well, the visualization at the opening is okay, and the tie into the topic. Well, why do this? And why is this interesting? What's good about this in the first place? And then you kind of shift tone completely and go the opposite direction on what you're talking about, and that was a little awkward. I thought, your opening can set up the topic in some way, but the way you presented it, it sounded like you were going to tell us why we shouldn't be thinking about doing those things and why this is a bad idea, and then it was suddenly, nope, I'm going to hit reverse and go the opposite direction. So that was a little confusing. But once you identified that purpose statement, I could see where you were headed, and I thought you had a pretty good setup of what the content was going to be. I think you need better follow-up on that content. The evidence that you have that people drink responsibly in other parts of the world is almost non-existent. The closest you come is this one guy who's written about this for Time magazine who says, I look at the rest of the world and I say this, I'm sorry, I've seen the rest of the world also, and I'm not seeing that. Now, I haven't traveled the rest of the world, but every time I see something on the news about soccer fans in Europe, they're all drunken a-holes just like we are. There's always some fight breaking out in some bar someplace. You've got a bunch of people who are puking on the subway or the tube, and I'm going, okay, well, where's the proof that people drink more responsibly in Europe than they drink here? I need to see that. I've heard people make that argument. You're making that argument. This guy says that that's the case. I'm going, okay, so where's the data on this? And that's one of your arguments, that apparently we could learn to be more responsible drinkers. And I'm not sure that there is such a thing as learning to be. Some people will always be responsible, and some people will always be irresponsible. Do we have a difference because of how many we have because the drinking age is too high? That's really the essential of your argument that says we would have a lower number of abusive drinkers if we learned earlier, we learned responsibly, that sort of thing. So you got to build an argument for that a little bit more, and I don't think that you've got much of an argument to support that particular position. Your argument seems to come about by saying that the reason people are not willing to change the drinking age is because the perception of college students in particular, or young people, and that there's kind of this separation in cultures and people identify differently. And I can't say that that's not part of the argument, but I can tell you that's not the reason that the drinking age is 21 instead of 18. The drinking age was lowered by 30 states to 18 in 1971, 72, and it went up 10 years later, and it's not because they thought, college students are a bunch of rowdy people who are out of control. It's a completely different issue, and you never even talk about that issue. It never comes up once. And you mentioned the organization that is primarily responsible for having the drinking age go up again, but you don't even tell us what it was that they were arguing about. You know what the organization is that I'm referring to? MAD. And what is it that they were so damn mad about? What does the DD stand for? Drunk driving. So we never get any discussion of the main issue that drove drinking, the legal drinking age up. And I'm going, talk about the elephant in the room, and There is never any discussion of it in your presentation. I just think that you've missed, that's an important argument. When we talked about reservation issues, remember in the Toolman model, reasons that people might reject the argument that you're making that has nothing to do with the things that you've said. So even if I agreed with everything that you said, this thing is still sitting there in the back of my head going, yeah, but don't we have a bunch of people getting killed because we lowered the drinking age before? Isn't that what drove up the age back in the 1980s, back up to 21? And you never talk about that. So I've got this wall that's built up here, and I'm going, why should I accept what you're saying? Because you've never addressed that kind of issue. And I think that that's a problem. All right. On the other hand, on the presentation stuff, I thought you did a nice job. I thought you were looking, he said you were looking down at your notes. I didn't notice that much. I thought you did a good job looking at us, and you seemed engaged and personable while you're speaking, which is all exactly the kind of thing we want. You just need to get the content to match the rest of the presentation. All right, thank you.